Thank you very much for having me. Thank you to Samantha Staley and this wonderful organization that she has helped put together. And as it said in the video, I'm Dr. Greg Savell. I'm a pediatrician for 25 years. I teach medical students at the university. Don't spend as much time there as Dr. Berman. But I've been in private practice for a long time, and I've seen a lot of things. I have Sharon Feckety, the lady's been my right-hand lady for a long time, sitting over here at the table, and we've tried to make a difference in kids' lives. So when we had the opportunity to become a part of Pitch, we jumped at it because this is what's important. And I'm going to talk to you about a lot of things today, but sometimes I think we get together and we promote a movie that some kids made in San Diego, or we talk about the issues of the day, or we show pictures of Jenny McCarthy and we make her into a piñata, which is also possible, I suppose. But the point is, I'm hoping that we can do things here with Pitch that everyone else in the country is going to want to look at and change the way they're doing things. I don't want to copy what people are doing. I want to take some of the ideas from the movie and use the movie as some kind of a vehicle to help increase awareness. But I want to say that we have the best people in the world right now in this room who can make decisions to make a difference in the lives of kids. I'm not the normal pediatrician. Obviously, you can look and see the way I dress and realize that. I could sit here like Sharon said and tell you that I dress this way because it disarms the children. But that's a lie. I always tell people when I was a kid, my mother was an off-Broadway actress and my father a car salesman. When those two people have sex, this is what you get. Genetics are hard to overcome, whether it's what I wear or dumb people making dumb children and then getting together and running our earth one day, years from now. So we're trying to make a difference in that. Let's talk about what we're trying to do here. And Samantha just talked about it a minute ago when it came to what Pitch is all about. But the idea is we're trying to immunize a higher percentage of kids here in the community. It introduces herd immunity, HERD. If you immunize 85% or more of the population against a given illness, it helps eradicate it because people come into the community and maybe their immunity is not good or established at all, but if there's no one to whom they can be exposed, perhaps they won't come down with that illness. But the idea of people here, and some of us are in the medical community, some of us are not, but we're all together for one purpose, is to try to educate ourselves to know the facts. Because if we're going to go out in society and try to make a difference, we just can't say things off the top of our head. We all exaggerate at times. I've been known to do it. But when you're trying to be the voice of authority, you want to make sure you have the facts. And we want to have a strategy. And part of this meeting later today after my little talk is about strategizing. That's what this is about, getting people together and having a plan. I know everybody in this room has a wonderful idea about what can be done. Let's try to get the best ones together and make a difference in the lives of kids. We want to identify target areas in this county. Some people would say, well, there's underprivileged areas, poor access to health care, or perceived poor access to health care, and we'll discuss that in a moment. But you could also find it in the most affluent communities where it might be considered fashionable to now not immunize your children. And that's a real problem. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. But those are the people who have more access to the media. They are the people who others look up to. You see somebody on television who's rich, famous, and they think that their child has some kind of a process because of immunizations. It's pretty difficult to combat against that, as I said in my little talk with Dr. Shuck from Bay News 9. We want to educate people about the truth, and it's our job to get the truth and give it to them. We want to take the emotion out of what we're doing. We're impassioned about what we're doing, or we would not be here. But we cannot speak with that sort of tone of voice when we're talking to people. We have to remember what agenda they think we have and what agenda they might have before we get together and speak to them. You don't want to let your own personal feelings affect things. Okay, we have the personal feelings that children should receive immunizations. My daughter's a sophomore at Boston College. Last year, there were 44 confirmed cases of mumps on that campus. 9,000 students, there's 450,000 college students in Boston. It's a huge city, and there's a huge number of kids. This is one of the smaller schools, and yet there were 44 cases because of people not getting their MMRs and other issues, a lot of foreign travel, people come from other countries. But this number was infinitely less just a few years ago. So we're starting to see that, which Dr. Berman and other people have preached about for a long time. People stop immunizing, the diseases are going to come back. She had two gentlemen on her crew team who had mumps, one of whom had orchitis, which is an inflammation of the testicular region, which is one of the horrendous things about mumps people don't remember. And why would we remember? There hasn't been many cases of mumps in decades. We have to get a better idea of why people aren't willing to immunize their children. Understanding why people don't want to immunize their kids will go a long way to helping us learn ways and strategies that we can help convince them otherwise. You know, there's a lot of non-medical parents will know that you're exaggerating, and that's why you want to educate yourself. You want to try to put yourself in the shoes of these people. Somebody comes into my office, and they tell me, as they always do, my cousin's friend got a flu shot, and the next day their spleen fell out. It sounds inane, and of course our response is to laugh, and sometimes I want to chuckle inside, but the truth is I have a poorly educated person medically, could be a person with a higher IQ than mine, but somebody who's poorly educated medically, who comes into my office and tells me a story like that they believe, because when you see a child, all I have to do is get somebody together and put a video on television for 30 seconds showing 7 kids with helmets on their head walking into walls and a sign in the back that says, "Thanks for the DPT," and you'll have a massive undertaking of people not getting immunizations the next day. That's all it takes. You have to not be condescending to people when you're trying to teach them something better. It's hard sometimes when you perceive people as being ignorant to what it is you're trying to teach them, but not being condescending is a plus. What we're trying to do here, what I've always tried to do in my practice of pediatrics, is try to be an accepted member of the community, despite my attire, who's an accepted authority figure. You know, we all do that in our own fields. Doesn't matter what it is. You want people to respect you. You want people to think that you know what you're talking about. By educating yourself and making some good decisions, that will go a long way to helping people to think that you can legitimize what it is you're talking about. Let's talk a little bit about the impediments, the crippling fears. What is standing in our way of properly immunizing the children of this community and the world, quite frankly? People's crippling fears. You know, the internet was never our friend. You can find 10,000 reviews of a bad restaurant, 3 good reviews, most towns. People have anecdotal stories of whatever it would be. It gets on the internet. It spreads like wildfire. Everybody knows code these days, so people can make wonderful-looking websites people believe. You take 2 websites. In the old days, the CDC's website was horrible. Didn't say it didn't have good information, but it looked ridiculous. Looked like something from 1985. And somebody else comes out and makes a beautiful website with floating flowers and pictures of children, and because they know what they're doing, because they came from Stanford and they understood code, and they made a pretty website. Which one is the average person going to believe? They're going to believe the one that looks better, even if the information there is less valid. You know, the telephone game. We all remember playing that when we were kids, and what I'm talking about is, you know, he said, she said, one person tells somebody a story, and by the time it gets to 4 people down the line, it's become something else entirely. My child had 102 fever after getting their 2-month immunizations, and 6 months down the road, when told 1 continent away, the child's head exploded when reaching the car seat in the car. And somewhere between that exaggeration and saying nothing at all is what the truth often is. You have to remember that most of the time people come into your office, or you're dealing with them in your everyday lives and you're trying to tell them things, they may not have any medical background at all. You know, why do we assume that people have any basic understanding of immunity or how it works or how immunization works? You know, for the most part, most people are willing to get immunizations for their children because they know it's the right thing. They come into the office and they aren't quite sure how it works, but they're happy to do what they perceive the government says because they want their children to be healthy. And that's the majority of people. So we're still in good shape about that, but we worry that in the future things will change. But there's a great group of people who don't feel that way. There are people who have group agendas. There are religious and quasi-religious groups, and I'm the least political person you'll ever meet. But we do have politics against us, you know, from 15-month-olds who have bee stings in Oldsmar who die because parents are against modern medicine and don't allow the EMS people who have arrived to give an EpiPen to a child whose life would have certainly been saved. That wasn't that long ago in this community. It happens every day across the world. These are the same people who don't believe in any kind of modern medicine and can have websites and convince other people that all we're doing is bad. Also, one of the impediments is kind of a perceived lack of access to health care. You know, in our community, of course, there's health care for everybody. It's a hot topic, and we're not talking about presidential initiatives and how we're going to get everybody health care and the rest of it. There's a problem with health care in this country and access and the cost of it, but that's not what this is all about. But there are many people who don't get immunized because they don't perceive any health care is available. I can't tell you how many people I have in my practice who've lost their insurance recently and come to me, and they still come for checkups and they pay cash. And I tell them you should go to the health department to get your immunizations. They have the same thing I do. Your tax dollars have paid for it. I don't make money on shots. Why would you spend hundreds of dollars of immunizations if you could go get the same thing at the health department? And how often people tell me, I'm not going to the health department. I wouldn't be in that place with those people. Those people who also love their children and wouldn't be questioning things you do. Those people who are going to receive the same vaccines from the same lot numbers and the same vials as you would receive here. And so how do we change people's idea about that? You know, you can say it's just people who are bigoted or whatever the case against people who don't have money or whatever it might be. I mean, it nauseates me to no end. But it's beyond that. So when we fight the battles of trying to educate people about immunizations, there's plenty of very intelligent people who don't have insurance or people who think it's in vogue not to get immunizations. So we have to attack that part of society as well. So what do we do about people who think it's fashionable not to immunize anymore? I have people living in my neighborhood, people who can buy and sell me many times over, who will spread the word whenever they can that immunizations are bad, even though they have kids who are quote-unquote normal, who received immunizations, because now they think it's a thing to do, because they heard it at the country club, or they perceive themselves as somebody who's sort of going to save society. That becomes a harder issue, because I think a lot of people who are in your office or in society who are poorly educated just want you to sit down and talk to them. And when you discuss the facts, they'll say something. When they see this movie, they'll say, you know, they'll cry, like we all did. Every time I see the movie, I cry. And then they'll want to get immunizations. But some of the other folks in society will feel quite the opposite. So let's talk a little bit about our solutions. What do I propose to you as a way we can make a difference? And again, you know, I talk a little bit about being a physician, and there are not many physicians in this room, and it doesn't matter. We're all in this boat together. I'm no different than anybody here. You need me, I need you. Everybody in this room needs each other to try to get together and strategize to make a difference in the lives of the kids. I want you to understand the idea of being flexible to be strong. Do you know how many pediatric groups, some of the largest in our community, will tell a new parent, if you don't get the immunizations for your children at exactly the same schedule and time the government has recommended, get out. You're not allowed to come to this office. Maybe my daughter goes to Boston College because so many more people come to my office that I can afford to send her there because people are so stupid. And I'm speaking about other physicians being stupid. Forget about the fact that you don't want to take the time to explain to people why they should receive immunizations on time, why they are a captured public, why you can induce better immunity oftentimes when vaccines are given together because of the way the body responds to those vaccines. And of course, Dr. Berman could speak infinitely more, with more wisdom and up-to-date wisdom about these issues than I, or than me. See, how about that? But the point is, you have to remember something. When somebody's in my office and I tell them it's my way or the highway, what does that make me? It makes me a bully. Anybody remember bullying? You think I wasn't bullied in school? I didn't dress like this. My mother would have liked me to. Short mouth with a big kid, grew up in a redneck town. Believe me, I was bullied a lot, and I didn't like it. And perhaps it helped to spur me on to where I am today, to try to become something that would make my parents proud because of how I was treated as a kid. But the point is, does it make me any better of a person when I bully other people in my office? Get these immunizations. Why? Because I said so. You know, give me a break. That's not the way most people respond. A few people would, but that wouldn't really be the kind of people you'd want in your office. You need to educate people without being condescending. It's difficult sometimes, right? We have knowledge, we want to talk to people, and it took me years and years of schooling to come to where I am now at my education about this, and I'm going to speak to somebody who can speak on great intellectual terms about other issues I know nothing about, but who knows nothing about medicine or immunity. And how do you do that? How do you speak to those people without making it look like you're talking down to them? It isn't easy. Do you have to always prove you're the smartest one in an argument or the smartest person in a room? I suppose I've had trouble with that over time. Maybe a lot of physicians do other people. When they think they know more than somebody, they set out to try to prove the fact that they're so smart, like anybody cares. You know, you really want to be able to address each concern the parents have. You want to be able to listen. You want to hear something in order for them to hear you. You know, you hear that all the time in every relationship. Why don't you become a better listener, and then maybe somebody will listen to you. It's no different when parents come into my office and have amazing concerns. And if I don't listen to those concerns, how can I try to combat each and every one of them and make them understand more? One of the greatest things I tell people all the time, and I try to tell parents when counseling about their children, you have to find the on-off switch to your own arrogance. Not many people know where that is. You know, there's a time and place to be arrogant. There's a time and place to assert your authority and to be arrogant. Raising children, my daughter's a successful all-A student, but there's been, challenges, and there's times I've had to be arrogant with things that she questioned over time. But you needed when to turn that arrogance off, because it turns people off, especially when you're trying to teach them about things of which they have no preconceived knowledge. But flexible to be strong also has to do with individualization of immunizations. Now, we're not going to talk about Dr. Bob Sears. Dr. Bob, a pediatrician who's too lazy to see patients anymore, who all of a sudden sits one day to take a poop and decides he'll write a book with an altered vaccine schedule. He'll tell you another story. He's a good doctor. But the point is, this guy's made $1 trillion off people's fears, because people come in all the time and they want to do it Dr. Bob's way. Well, Dr. Bob's way is okay, but Dr. Bob doesn't have any medical science behind his way, except for the fact he was performing some act of poopification while he came up with it. And this is being filmed. I'm sure Bob will call me later today. We'll have lunch. But the point is that there has to be some flexibility. People are going to come in my office and they tell me, Dr. Greg, I want to get a couple of immunizations and come in more often. Who am I to say not to do that? Okay, we're going to agree that I want you to have all the shots at one time, but you know how many people come into my office and want to split IMS, and then they come back the next month and say, there was no problem, like you said. Let's just do it. We don't have the time, or we now realize that our fears are gone. Well, then we won that battle, didn't we? I think you have to understand the sum is better than none. That's not really what we're preaching here, and that's not what the government wants you to think. But I'm a firm believer. If we can get people to immunize against some things, it's better than none. Yes, if people don't want to get MMRs, because there's a few people in splinter groups who believe there's some autism that relates from MMRs, which most people don't believe anymore. And there are still cases of mumps in the campus of Boston College, but less people die of the flu, or less people are going to be getting diphtheria or things of that nature, then I think we have to be able to accept that. You want to help the parents to be able to have a plan for their own immunizations. And again, I'm not just talking to doctors here, but you want to make people think, when you're trying to teach them how to better immunize their kids, that they can be part of the plan. You tell people, go see your doctor and sit down with him or her and ask if you can't be part of the process of coming up with how the immunizations will be given and at what kind of an interval they will be done. You know, if you compromise now, that can really lead to some success later. That's what I was just mentioning to you. And we do that all the time in the office. You know, we've made many videos. This is just an interview I did, and I get interviewed in the news a lot, and I'm honored by that, because I want to be able to tell people what we think and try to help people, and if it makes a difference to a few people who went and got some immunizations after that interview, then I've done a good job, because that's what it's all about. But we want to be able to get together and let people know that they can be part of this process. People always think that I have an agenda. You know, people are very paranoid. You ever hear somebody tell you, well, the government wants you to get those shots? You know, they're messing with your mind, or, the drug companies, it's big business. Well, there's a lot of money in immunizations, but as I always tell people, when I sell somebody a shot for $150, I may make $23 off of it, and the rest of the money, probably 80% of it, goes for the lawyers who represent the companies that made it. That might be a bit of an altered amount, but, because of all the fraudulent claims and things. But people often think that there is some hidden agenda when I'm giving immunizations, and you have to try to fight past the paranoia some people have. Let me spend a minute and tell you what my role is. Again, I said, and Sharon, faculty, my practice manager, my friend, my right-hand person, that we're honored to be here and be a part of Pitch, and that I want this group of people in this room to make the difference that changes the world, and not just be the vehicle to go out in society and preach some information that some kids put into a movie, and a darn good movie, by the way, and we're going to be showing it publicly, and we're going to speak about that. It's important. We should be proud of those kids. Incredible stuff. Tear-jerking, heart-wrenching information. But I want ideas to come from here that are going to change the world. Let us use the internet and social media for a plus, because we can get the ideas we have in this room out to the people of this world almost instantly, and we know how to do that. I want to be a soldier for the war on immunization refusals. I want everybody in this room to be a soldier. This is a war. I've dressed like this, and I've talked about giving people a break, about immunizing with flexibility to get people in my office and hopefully talk them into something more concrete over time. But this is a war. When I talked to somebody at my daughter's national championships for rowing, where their boat came in 6th in the nation, because she's related to the mailman, Jerry's a lot more athletic. And I see a kid who tells me about his episode of orchitis, or swelling and pain in his testicles, which rendered him sterile, never be able to have kids, because he had mumps. That reminds me that we're in a war. We're in a war against ignorance. We're in a war against people with intelligence who would like it if nobody were ever immunized again. So I want to be a soldier in that war, and I want everybody in this room to be a soldier as well. I want you to listen to what people are saying. I want you to be able to know what it is we have to tell people to change their minds. I want you to educate yourself. I want you to be the smartest you can. I don't care what you do for a living or how you ended up in this room today. I want you to be able to educate yourself so you know about immunizations. I want people to bring questions here. I want to talk about them, Dr. Berman, but I want to ask questions about you, and I want you to educate me. We want to go out there together and make a difference. I want to strive for progress every week. We talk about what's going to go on by the end of 2017. I want to show true progress in percentages of children immunized in this country every week, every year, not just here in this town. We're going to partner with people in this room to make a difference, to attack people from all aspects of society. I want you to educate the people you know about the facts of which you're aware, so they can say things intelligently as well. You can spend a half an hour telling people something they need to know, and it takes only 10 minutes of listening to somebody else to undo all the information you gave. Let's increase immunization rates with an effort that comes from this room and spreads across the globe. And let's remember something, and not to belittle those who don't immunize. Here's the thing. People like me, they think I'm a pretty good pediatrician. We're pretty popular for a lot of reasons. I'm a passionate person, I'm a smart guy, whatever it is. But it doesn't mean that I can't piss somebody off in my office one day and let them write some scathing review about me, which can then not just ruin my business, but change what somebody else will think. What if there's somebody else out there who's thinking about getting immunizations, and they heard about them, they want to come, then somebody sees something on the internet, and they choose not to. It's not just about bottom line dollars, it's about a captured audience. So if you spend 99% of your effort trying to teach those who are on the fringe of deciding to immunize, and only 1% belittling those who will never immunize their children, it's going to serve us all a benefit. So, in closing, and I can't thank everybody enough for being here today. It's in the middle of a weekday. I can't thank Samantha Staley enough for getting us involved with this wonderful organization of which I am exceedingly proud to be a part. But in closing, I want to remind you that what we're doing here is important. Pitch is important. We get together, we watch a movie, and we cry, but that's not what this is about. That movie can get people to cry, and it might convince a few people to immunize their kids. That's awesome. But we're going to educate ourselves. We're going to educate our friends. No matter what it is we do for a living, we're going to get out in society and make a difference. That is the legacy I want this organization, this initiative to have. If we can raise the percentage only 1 point, that's thousands of kids. If we can bring ourselves up to a true incidence of herd immunity where we no longer have to worry about people being exposed in this community, how amazing would that be? In the end, I want to thank every single person for being involved in something like this. It's controversial at times. Some of your friends might think something different of you, who have strong opinions opposite of what we are thinking. But I can't thank enough everybody in this room for getting together and putting time in for this organization and to listen to what I had to say here. I'm honored to be a part, and if there's ever anything that I can do to help any of you in any way, don't hesitate to call upon me. Thank you for your time.